Hi everyone. So today's reading is from April 25th. A principle of magnetic interchange between people is that the stronger magnet always influences the weaker, never the reverse. Unless your inner strength is great, never think yourself capable of uplifting others merely by the exercise of goodwill. Let me read it again. A principle of magnetic interchange between people is that the stronger magnet always influences the weaker, never the reverse. Unless your inner strength is great, never think of yourself capable of uplifting others merely by the exercise of goodwill. This is a very important reading for us that are on the spiritual path and are striving earnestly to uplift ourselves and to uplift others around us. That at some point on the spiritual path, we begin to realize that God is in everyone and that God is within us. And that realization can sometimes make us put our spiritual guard down a little bit. And that we just feel that everything's all right, God's in everyone. But really, we need to be careful as we interact with other human beings. And we need to be honest if we have the power to uplift them, or if we do not. And if we do not, they will have the power to bring us down. And so we're going to talk this evening about a spiritual type of power, the power of magnetism. That this is an important topic to understand, and actually it's usually not one that is much talked about, simply because of the fact that most people aren't at the level to understand it. That Sri Yukteswar wrote in his book, The Holy Science, that if you understand magnetism, then you won't be reading this book anyways. And for most of us, we're here on this planet in Dwapara Yuga, which is an age of energy, so that the age of magnetism is Treta Yuga. This is an age of mental powers, an age when the pyramids were built, and an age where things in that age, Treta Yuga, will seem like magic to us today in Dwapara Yuga. However, we'll talk a little bit about the magic of magnetism this evening, because even if we don't have magnetism completely mastered, that we should be aware of it and we should do our best to protect ourselves magnetically and uplift ourselves magnetically. You know, on the spiritual path, that there is no floating, I'll just take it easy and just maintain whatever level of spirituality I've achieved right now. In every moment, we're either rising or we're sinking and falling. And magnetism is one of these topics where it seems like, I'll be all right. It's okay. These are my friends from the past. No problem. I'll just hang out with them for a while. And those subtle influences that they may exert could take us the next morning saying, what have I done? Or perhaps it could be even more subtle, and it could just slowly pull on us, one phone call, one email at a time, until we realize years later that somehow we've gone off course and we don't know how. So in order to deeply talk about magnetism, I want to first talk about how the creation is made, that everything has come down from a source of infinite consciousness, a state beyond all vibration. Then that state that is beyond all vibration, that is God, had to make itself into duality, and that happened on the thought plane, that happened in the causal world. Another way of looking at it is that happened in the realm of magnetism. And then a step below that is the realm of energy, or sometimes we call this the astral world. And then a step below that is the physical world that is all around us, that we know and some of us love so dearly. And I won't go into that topic of loving the world dearly, but on some level that we need to not hate the world, because it's just a pendulum that swings back and forth, and then the next thing we know we'll be loving it. It's that we need to be neutral towards the physical world and know that it's God who has created this world, and our true love is God, our true home is God, that this is just a temporary place. So, now, we are in Dwapara Yuga. Most of us are trying to understand energy, and if we can gain an understanding of energy, then we can begin to gain an understanding of magnetism. One way of looking at magnetism is that magnetism, on one level, it's not the only level, is our thoughts. And if we want to learn to control our thoughts, it's very hard to just say, okay, now I'm going to control my thoughts. I mean, before that, even, we have to become aware of our thoughts and learn to become aware of what we're thinking, at least in the waking hours. The advanced yogi is even aware of what he's dreaming and what all of his thoughts are in those hours. So the point here was that it is difficult to become or to gain complete control over our mind, but the way to gain control over our mind is first to gain control over our energy. And as we get more control of our energy, we will gain more control of our magnetism, or our mind. Remember Paramahansa Yoganandaji's sayings, the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. And the one that comes after that, the greater the flow of energy, the greater the magnetism. And for those of you who have a scientific background, that this is just pure physics, that we know that when energy flows in a wire, that it creates a magnetic field around it. And the important thing for us as yogis is that we want to create a positive flow of energy within our own selves, and then we can create a positive magnetism around us. And so we can learn to attract whatever we want for ourselves, although if we're true yogis, we don't want anything for ourselves except to uplift others. But we can attract certain circumstances, let's say, for the organization that we may be serving, for our friends, our loved ones. You get the point. The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. The greater the flow of energy, the greater the magnetism. And now, having a great flow of magnetism isn't just dependent only on willpower and sending our will and forcing energy like that. There's another half to magnetism. So it's not just the thought and will. The other half is the heart and having that drawing power. And that we will never find God if we don't have the power to draw him to us. Another way of saying this, you'll never find God if you don't have the ability to attract good friends, or to hold good friends throughout an entire incarnation, or to attract people just to the spiritual path. That we have to have that. So those are the two poles of a physical magnet, that if you play with two magnets, that if you take one end of the magnet, you'll see it pushes the magnet away, or let's even take a neutral object for the other object, just a pure piece of iron, that actually the magnet would attract both pieces of iron. So we do need the magnet on each side. That on one side it would push it away, but then on the other side it would attract it. And we really need to learn how to cultivate both of those abilities within ourselves. Master said that spiritual mathematics, it is, not an exact quote, but Kriya Yoga and devotion. And let's look at it in terms of magnetism. That when we have the Kriya Yoga, that we are moving energy up and down our spine, and so we're making the energy or the electricity flow greater. Therefore, we're making the magnetism stronger. So that's one way to generate the magnetism. The other way to generate the magnetism, gain a super love for God in your heart. While I'm on this topic, I just want to point out there's many ways to get this energy going, that you can just get out there and serve and never have a thought of self enter in. Just think that it's God who's doing this through me, and it's God that I'm serving in all of these people. And if you can have that, a tremendous amount of energy can flow. It is said that Lahiri Mahashaya, in a past incarnation as King Janak, achieved God realization simply through serving. So that's a valid way to get this energy flowing, get the magnetism that's needed in order to find God. Another way is to do some of the techniques. Do Kriya Yoga, do Mahamudra, do the energization exercises, do Kachari Mudra. Get in advanced and a lot of energy flowing. Another way is, as I was saying earlier, devotion. There's many ways to God, but all of them you need to get this energy flowing so that you can generate that magnetism, so that you can really call on God. Earlier we were saying one way of looking at magnetism is the thoughts, that when we want to find God, we need to be able to single-pointedly keep our mind on God. It takes that kind of magnetism, that flow of energy where you're able just to keep your mind on God, God, God alone. And just climbing quickly the path of Patanjali, that if we can first learn to sit very still, asana, then do pranayama, means Kriya Yoga, get that energy flowing. We will create a magnetism where we can withdraw our mind and all of our energy in and achieve a state of pratyahara. And then after that, the three higher stages of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi come once we've learned to control our magnetism. But first, we need to learn how to control our energy. It's very important. Another point that's in my mind right now, that Master himself, this topic here in this book is talking about the exchange of magnetism between two human beings, and the stronger magnetism always wins. Now you think, well, once you become a master, well then you're just free, you can just do whatever you want. Think about this, that Master himself would always take a spiritual bodyguard with him. Once someone asked Swami Kriyananda, oh, I forgot that point, because it's one of Master's well-known lines, but if it comes back, I'll bring it up later. It's okay. The point here is that we need to always be aware of our magnetism. It's right to have an open heart, and it's right on the spiritual path to have an open heart at all times, but we also need to have a very thick skin, and we need to learn how to let our mental feelers go out and feel the world around you. That Master told Swami Kriyananda, I know every thought you think, and he proved it to him, and he did, and Swamiji proved the same thing to me. So let your mental feelers go out when it's appropriate, when you're in harmonious company, and be able to withdraw your mental feelers in also very deeply and quickly when it's necessary. That when the thoughts of delusion come, and we're constantly being bombarded by thoughts of delusion in this world when we're in negative company, and that negative magnetism is pulling us down. But remember, when the first thought of delusion comes in, that's the chance to cast it out. But if you start thinking about those negative thoughts, and thinking, well, I'm stronger than this, and I can just think about this for a while, and why did God make these negative things, and he made this negative thing and that. And if you let that thought keep rolling around, you really can get stuck. And it's like a whirlpool, that magnetism, and it just can suck you down and down and down. I've been thinking about this one thought a lot lately, and this is a one example of money and many incarnations. Just look at the people around you, and you'll see people with all different levels of financial abundance or just poverty and everything in between. And you wonder, why is life like that? And we are advanced enough to know that it's because of karma and past lives. But when you really start thinking this through, let's say that you have a lot of money in this incarnation, but you become stingy, is the word that some people use, greedy, that you just keep, this is my money. That guy didn't work hard for it. Get away from me. And you think, I'm going to use this money to only make myself happy and just buy things that make me happy in the five senses. And this is just me and mine. That if we have money and we use it just for our own gratification, for the sense pleasures in this world, that in the next incarnation, I'm not going to say we're going to be born in terrible poverty. I mean, karma is a complex thing, but we'll certainly take a step down. And then if we do it again in that incarnation and just think of ourselves, whatever little money we have, again we'll take a step down. It can go all the way down into intense poverty. And then slowly we can work our way back up through many incarnations to have wealth again. And just think, those two things, money and greed, how they can just, for incarnations after incarnations, this can go on for a day of Brahma, just that one thing. And then think of how many other influences there are, magnetic influences all around us. It's not just money that's a trap. There's many of them. I may as well talk about the three great delusions right now, and that is intoxicants, sex, and money. And these three just pull people down again and again to think that they're in the ego, that this is the way that's going to bring them happiness in life, and it never works. But once we realize this and want to pull ourselves out of this trap, that those influences, certainly the average worldly man, he just thinks that's the way of life. Have as much of these three as you can possibly get your hands on and enjoy them. And as long as we're surrounded by those magnetic influences, that we have to beware. One way to protect yourself is to live in a spiritual community. Live with other people who are spiritually like-minded. If you can't move into a spiritual community, then at least find a spiritual church or a spiritual group that you agree with their teachings, and spend time with them. Spend as much time with them as you can. Meditate with other people. Meditate with people who can meditate much more deeply than you. That will help your meditations. And if you're a very, very deep meditator, Find some people who can't meditate as deeply as you and share your magnetism with them. And the way to share your magnetism with people when you're meditating is to just sit there very, very still. If the other person next to you is fidgeting around, it's not right in meditation. Say, hey, you, stop moving around in meditation. That ruins the whole thing. And this is the way that spiritual people behave, that they help people by their magnetism. You know, Master had a disciple, and once he hypnotized a woman, that they were at some social gathering, a party, I don't know what it was. And this lady didn't like this man at all, Master's disciple. I don't know what exactly was going on. But then, by the end of the evening, that lady was following this man around because he had hypnotized her. And at the end, Master scolded him for that. And he said that masters don't hypnotize people, that they prefer to work with magnetism. That means that they always leave the other individual their own free will, and the will to accept that positive magnetism or to reject that positive magnetism. This brings us to another very, very important point, that the highest thing that you can take from your guru is his magnetism. Once Master said to a group of disciples, it may have just been a single disciple, I don't remember, you're stealing lots of magnetism. That's very good. That the Master wants to give all of his magnetism. He wants you to remember who you truly are. He wants to bring you home, but you have to open your heart to him, and you have to draw on that magnetism. That magnetism is not just a one-way interchange, that it goes both ways, that the person receiving it has to want to receive it. The person giving it has to consciously know what he's doing and give that magnetism. So we can achieve a deep spiritual magnetic states in two ways. The first we said earlier was to do Kriya Yoga, or many of the other techniques I mentioned, to raise that energy in the spine and then raise your level of magnetism and consciously draw God to you. Or the other way is, and the same way that we can take one magnet and put it next to a bar of iron and it will magnetize that iron. Spend time in the company of your guru. Touch his feet. The eyes are the most magnetic thing, the physical touch and the eyes. This is why that monks, that they do the namaskar, that they don't shake people's hands very much, and that monks who really know what they're doing, that they're very conscious of when they're sharing magnetism, whose eyes they're looking into. You can feel it right away as you become sensitive spiritually. That when you look into some people's eyes and they have a very worldly, down-pulling vibration, you feel the sensuality in them. Just look away. Or if you need to be looking in their eyes, that it might be awkward not to be for whatever reason, go right up to the spiritual eye and look into that person's spiritual eye. You can learn so much about magnetism just by watching people's eyes. That once a reporter came, it's a crazy story, but I'll tell it. A reporter came with a lady in a very low-cut dress, and he put her right next to Master to see if his eyes would go down, and then he was going to snap a picture of that and say, look at this Swami, look how worldly he is, look at his eyes, look at all this. But Paramahansa Yogananda knew exactly what was going on, and he of course handled the situation properly, and then asked the reporter, why do you do such things? Why would you set someone up to fail, even a good person, and try and put them in a bad situation and make them look really bad and try and ruin them? And the man said, well, this is the type of thing that sells newspapers. And Master, just in some, I'm sure, courteous way, or in a way to help the man, but just told him that this isn't right and you shouldn't be doing this thing. But anyways, the point of all of that is watch your eyes. Watch where they go at any given time, and you will learn to watch and understand your own magnetism. You will learn to understand subtly the magnetism of other human beings and the influence that it has on you. And the influence of magnetism is very, very subtle, that you have to learn to watch your thoughts. More than even that, thoughts is one side of magnetism. The other pole of it is your feelings. That you have to learn to watch your feelings. And this becomes very, very subtle. These days I don't even read the newspaper, but I can feel what's going on in mass consciousness, and on a very practical level, that people tell me what's going on in the news, the big things anyways. But I don't watch the news just because it is based on so much negativity these days. That's what sells, and so it's this terrible downward spiral that's just really can and is pulling society down. But you can find positive news channels if you look for them. Support those channels and don't get caught up in the negative news. You see, even that has a magnetism. And when there's millions of minds thinking of negative news, that then your mind just gets sucked up in it and you think, well, I just want to know what's going on. Normal, valid, but you must try to not get sucked into the average consciousness of the average human being. My gosh, time has just flown by here. I just want to talk a couple other ways that you can exchange magnetism with people and protect yourself. Be very conscious of who you shake hands with. That causes a horseshoe magnet. And again, whoever has the stronger magnet will win. And when you shake hands, your upper three chakras are exchanging energy and magnetism with the upper three chakras of the other person. And those are the spiritual chakras. But likewise, the legs and on up, the lower three chakras are exchanging magnetism with the lower three chakras of the other person when you shake hands. Two horseshoe magnets are formed. You can see them like that. And so be very, very careful who you exchange magnetism with. Swamiji once was forced to shake hands with many people. He told Master afterwards, I don't want to do that. Master told him, go do it again. Next Sunday, you were thinking of yourself. That's why you feel so drained. Next time, think that you're giving God to other people. Swamiji did that again, and then he felt so, so very uplifted. So you can send out positive magnetism, but be careful. That's about all the time I have time for. Time also is a factor of magnetism, and you can learn to banish it if you get your magnetism very, very high. I recommend reading this book. Read the days surrounding April 25th, which is today. You'll learn a lot about magnetism. Swamiji also can teach you a lot about magnetism if you'll read the Raja Yoga book or just tune in to him in very many other ways. I can't believe how time has flown. It's been a great, great joy spending time with you this evening, and I look forward to the next time. May God bless your spiritual journey.